I saved for my son's wedding gift, then he said I wasn't elegant enough to attend, so I found myself standing at a crossroads of parental love and personal dignity. For years I had put aside a portion of my modest income, foregoing small luxuries and carefully budgeting every expense, all to create a substantial wedding gift for my only son. Growing up in a blue-collar household, I had learned the value of hard work and sacrifice, lessons I thought I had successfully passed on to him. Every month, I would transfer money into a special account, watching with pride as it grew, imagining the look on his face when I presented him with a check that would help him and his fiancée begin their new life together. My son had always been ambitious, climbing social ladders I had never even known existed. His engagement to Charlotte, the daughter of a prominent family in our city, seemed to accelerate his transformation. Gradually, our weekly dinners became monthly, then quarterly, with excuses about busy schedules and important networking events. I noticed subtle changes in his appearance and mannerisms, designer clothes replacing the comfortable sweaters I had once bought him, his once hearty laugh now a restrained chuckle. Still, I dismissed my concerns, telling myself this was simply part of growing up and finding one's place in the world. I continued adding to the wedding fund, occasionally making larger deposits when I managed to pick up extra shifts at the hospital where I worked as a nurse. The wedding invitations went out 6 months before the big day, elegant, cream-colored envelopes with gold embossing that felt weighty in my hands. I opened mine immediately, tracing my fingers over the ornate script announcing the union of my son and Charlotte at one of the most exclusive venues in the city. I marked the date on my calendar with a heart, then called my son to express my excitement. The conversation was brief, his tone distracted as he mentioned something about finalizing the guest list and needing to coordinate with the wedding planner. I offered to help with preparations as any mother would, but he quickly assured me everything was under control. Little did I know that this was the beginning of a painful revelation about where I truly stood in my son's new life. Weeks passed without much communication, which I attributed to wedding stress. Then, one evening, my phone rang displaying my son's number. My heart leapt with anticipation, hoping for details about the rehearsal dinner or perhaps a request for family photographs for a slideshow. Instead, his voice came through unnaturally formal, as if he were speaking to a client rather than his mother. He explained that he and Charlotte had been discussing the aesthetic of their wedding, a word that hung awkwardly between us. Suddenly, without warning, he stated that perhaps it would be better if I attended only the ceremony, but not the reception. Confused, I asked why, assuming there must be some practical reason like limited space at the venue. His answer shattered something fundamental between us. In carefully measured words, he explained that Charlotte's family had certain expectations about the caliber of guests at the reception. My son, my own flesh and blood, said I wasn't elegant enough to attend his wedding reception. He mentioned my modest clothing, my unrefined manner of speaking, my lack of social connections, all delivered as if discussing an unfortunate business liability rather than the woman who had raised him. He suggested I might feel uncomfortable among such distinguished company, framing this exclusion as some sort of kindness. I sat in stunned silence, phone pressed against my ear, hearing the soft background murmur of what sounded like his fiancée's voice coaching him through the conversation. I saved for my son's wedding gift, then he said I wasn't elegant enough to attend, so I remained silent for several long moments, trying to process this unexpected wound. In my 49 years of life, I had faced many challenges, raising a child alone after my husband's early death, working night shifts to afford a home in a good school district, stretching every dollar until it screamed. But nothing had prepared me for this particular kind of pain. It wasn't just the rejection, but the casual cruelty of it, the implicit suggestion that I should have expected it. My first instinct was to apologize, to somehow make myself smaller to accommodate this new reality. But something stopped me. Perhaps the memory of my late husband, who had always emphasized the importance of self-respect. Or perhaps simply the accumulated wisdom of my years. Instead of accepting this humiliation, I found my voice, I asked my son if he was truly comfortable with having his mother sit alone in her car during his wedding reception, watching from afar as others celebrated what should be a family occasion. There was an uncomfortable pause, followed by a sigh that sounded rehearsed in its exasperation. He suggested I could stay at a nearby cafe until the ceremony was over, as if offering a generous compromise. In that moment, the years of financial sacrifice flashed through my mind, the vacations never taken, the clothes mended rather than replaced, the small daily privations that had allowed me to build his wedding gift. With steady hands, I opened my banking app and looked at the wedding fund balance, $62,027, representing 8 years of careful saving. Without raising my voice, I informed my son that I would not be attending his wedding at all, neither ceremony nor reception. He started to protest, his tone shifting from condescension to alarm, but I continued calmly. I explained that I had indeed saved a substantial wedding gift for him, but that I now realized it would be better directed elsewhere. I would be donating the entire sum to the hospital's scholarship program for nursing students from underprivileged backgrounds. There was a strangled sound from the other end of the line, followed by a torrent of backpedaling. Suddenly, I was indispensable to the wedding, my presence essential, my participation in the reception absolutely necessary. Charlotte apparently had been misunderstood, or my son had miscommunicated her concerns. Little did I know that my decision would trigger a cascade of unexpected consequences. Within hours, my phone was bombarded with messages, first from my son, then Charlotte, then her parents, and finally various relatives who had somehow been looped into this escalating situation. The messages ranged from apologies to accusations, from attempts at reconciliation to thinly veiled threats about family unity. My sister called, having received a distressed call from my son claiming I was acting irrationally due to empty nest syndrome, or possibly pre-retirement anxiety. I listened to her concerns, then calmly explained the situation. Her shocked silence, followed by a string of colorful expletives directed at my son, provided the first moment of genuine laughter I had experienced in weeks. The following morning, I contacted the hospital's development office and scheduled a meeting with the director of the scholarship program. I explained my desire to establish a named scholarship for nursing students who were single parents, specifying that recipients should demonstrate both academic promise and financial need. The director was overjoyed, explaining how transformative such a gift would be for deserving students struggling to balance education with parental responsibilities. As I signed the paperwork finalizing the donation, I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders. For the first time since the phone call with my son, I slept through the night without waking to replay his words in my mind. Word of my donation apparently spread quickly through hospital channels, eventually reaching the local newspaper, which ran a small feature about the new scholarship. I had not sought publicity, but I didn't shy away from it either when the reporter contacted me. I spoke honestly about being a single mother while pursuing my nursing career, carefully avoiding any mention of the circumstances that had inspired the donation. Somehow, without my knowledge, the article made its way to Charlotte's parents. Prominent community members who apparently recognized my name. Suddenly, without warning, my doorbell rang one Sunday afternoon, and I opened it to find Charlotte's mother standing on my porch, looking simultaneously imperious and uncomfortable. Our conversation was strained at first, with careful pleasantries exchanged like currency of dubious value. She admired my modest home with the practiced eye of someone accustomed to assessing property, noting the well-tended garden and the hand-painted mailbox my late husband had crafted years ago. Eventually, after 2 cups of tea, she revealed the purpose of her visit. She had read the article, connected the dots regarding the timing of my donation, and extracted the full story from her daughter. With surprising frankness, she admitted that she had been struggling with her own reservations about the wedding, not because of my son's background, but because of what she called concerning patterns of behavior she had observed in him. My son, it seemed, had been the one obsessed with projecting an image of sophistication and wealth, going so far as to misrepresent his own upbringing and my occupation to Charlotte's family. The revelation landed like a physical blow. My son had apparently described me as a former doctor who had unfortunately had to scale back to nursing after his father's death. He had invented a family history of privilege and prominence, complete with non-existent family properties and investments lost through tragic circumstances. Charlotte's mother, Barbara, showed me social media posts where my son had checked in at exclusive restaurants on evenings I knew he had been working late at his office, creating a carefully curated fiction of luxurious leisure. She had initially attributed his exaggerations to youthful insecurity, but his treatment of me had triggered deeper concerns about his character. As we talked into the evening, I felt an unexpected kinship with this woman from a world so different from my own. Both of us mothers, witnessing the painful gap between the children we raised and the adults they had become. By the following weekend, the wedding had been postponed indefinitely. Charlotte had apparently insisted on meeting with me privately against my son's vehement objections. Our lunch together at a quiet cafe near the hospital was awkward but illuminating. She was younger than I had imagined, her expression vacillating between embarrassment and determination as she apologized for her role in what had happened. She admitted that while she had expressed concerns about the wedding guest list, she had never suggested excluding me. That had been entirely my son's initiative, apparently part of his ongoing effort to reinvent himself as someone born to privilege, rather than someone working to earn it. As our conversation progressed, I began to see her not as an antagonist, but as another casualty of my son's desperate social climbing. The aftermath unfolded in unexpected ways. My son arrived at my house unannounced one evening, alternating between recrimination and reconciliation attempts. When neither gained traction, he finally broke down, confessing to a web of exaggerations and outright lies that had become increasingly difficult to maintain. His distress seemed genuine, though I noticed it centered more on the consequences of his actions than on their inherent wrongness. I listened without interrupting, recognizing in his frantic explanations the voice of a child caught in a lie, not a man taking responsibility. When he finally exhausted himself, I spoke plainly about my disappointment, not in his desire for advancement, which was natural enough, but in his willingness to treat people, including his mother, as either props or obstacles in his personal narrative. My son eventually moved to another state, taking a job less prestigious but more suited to his actual qualifications. Charlotte decided not to accompany him, their relationship unable to recover from the foundation of falsehoods it had been built upon. We communicate sparingly through text messages, occasional calls on birthdays and holidays, a wounded relationship slowly finding its new boundaries. Meanwhile, the scholarship program flourished, with the first recipient graduating with honors and accepting a position in the same hospital where I continued to work until my retirement. At the graduation ceremony, watching this young single mother accept her nursing degree with her young daughter beaming in the audience, I felt a sense of completion that had eluded me in my relationship with my own child. Years have passed since I saved for my son's wedding gift. Then he said I wasn't elegant enough to attend, so I chose dignity over appeasement. My son and I have established a fragile peace, built on more honest, if less frequent, communication. He seems humbler now, more authentic in his aspirations and accomplishments. Charlotte married an elementary school teacher 3 years after her broken engagement, and surprisingly, we maintain a warm relationship, exchanging holiday cards and meeting for coffee when her work brings her to my city. Barbara and I serve together on the scholarship committee, our unlikely friendship a reminder that connections can form in the aftermath of painful revelations. As for me, I discovered that standing firm in my self-worth opened unexpected doors. To new friendships, to community recognition, to a retirement filled with purpose and respect. Sometimes, when I meet with scholarship recipients and hear their stories of determination against difficult odds, I think about the wedding that never happened and the gift that found a different purpose. What began as an act of maternal love transformed into something broader, touching lives I would never otherwise have encountered. The elegant wedding reception I wasn't refined enough to attend has been replaced by graduation ceremonies and hospital recognition events, where I am welcomed with genuine appreciation. In life's curious accounting, what initially felt like a devastating loss revealed itself as a redirection towards something more authentic and ultimately more fulfilling. The $62,000 intended to start one new life instead launched several, including in many ways my own.